I also had dinner that night and I didn't put my food away. So I woke up in the middle of the night to like all this noise of like, it was a chip packet, and this bear was like scavenging in my food, and I woke up and just like panic, and a goose just started to charge at me and just attack me. And yeah, just it was getting me quite good actually. So I basically just started to fight back and defend myself. Yeah, I came to with him holding my legs in the air and with my hand bandaged up.
Matthew Fairbrother, welcome to the Downtime podcast, man. How's things with you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's an awesome opportunity to be on here.
That's a total pleasure, mate. There's a lot to talk about, and you've definitely been up to some interesting stuff over the last couple of years. Before we get stuck into like the obvious bike packing around the world for the EWS kind of side of stuff, just give us a bit of background. Like, where did you grow up and how did you get into riding bikes? Because you've not been into mountain biking for that long, eh?
Yeah, so I've always lived in New Zealand my whole life, and I first got into mountain biking, I think, when I was about 12. Just followed my siblings into it, and I think at its core, just wanted to be better than them. So yeah, I was just chasing them down the hills, following them over jumps until, yeah, I guess one day I got better than them, and I just followed that wave and got into downhill first and did that for a while, and then started pedaling a bit more, and got all jumbled up between disciplines, and don't know what I'd call myself anymore.
Yeah, when did enduro like come onto your radar? When did you start getting involved in that?
I'd say in 2020. So only a few years ago. I think I've been biking for 6 years in total. It is. So I think I just started to gain a bit of fitness. I live about 20 kilometers away to where our local bike park is. So I think I just began pedaling to the hill and then pedaling back home. So it was quite a commute, and I think that's kind of where I built up the fitness and then actually began to enjoy biking up the hill. And then that's kind of where that kicked off.
Fair play. And like quite a lot of Kiwis make their way over to Europe, and get stuck into the riding scene over here. It's been something that's been going on for many years. What attracted you to EWS specifically? Like what made that decision to come over to, I think Innerleithen was your first EWS?
Yeah, so I think just following other New Zealanders with their missions kind of sparked the idea of doing it myself and coming over. And I was planning on coming over the last COVID year and doing I was actually only going to do there was an EWS meant to be in Nelson, New Zealand, so I was going to do that and then do the one in Tasmania. That was going to be the start of it for me, but they got cancelled, so I still wanted to compete. So the next step was then to fly all the way over here to Scotland and do the Tweed Valley EWS the next year. And then since I was going to be over here, I made the decision to kind of commit to the full season because plane flights aren't cheap getting here. So I was just going to make the most out of it and do as much of the season as I could.
Fair play. How did you raise the money back home then to get enough? Because like you say, it's a huge plane ticket to get across, and then you need some money to live off while you're here.
So as soon as I confirmed the idea that I was going to do it, I finished school, and then I started working 7 days a week. I was working 5 days a week at a big chain store as a mechanic, and then in the weekends I was working as a mechanic again at the local bike park. So I did that for maybe about 5 months up until I left, and then amidst that I signed up for online school. So I was working and then doing school online after work while also juggling biking and going to the gym and all that. So it was quite a hectic lead up, and it was quite nice once I managed to get over here. And that was kind of when I first got to chill out.
Fair play. Are you one of these people that seems to be able to like manage without too much sleep? Like, how do you fit all that into your life?
I guess I was super tunnel visioned. Like, there wasn't much else going on at that time. Like, I think I'd singled myself out. Like, I didn't have any mates almost. I guess I was just like yeah, tunnel vision on the goal, and that didn't bother me. I just, I wanted something, so I chased it, and yeah, I did what I needed to, and it all worked out. So yeah, I can't complain.
Fair play. So am I right in saying that when you came over, you didn't like have any plans exactly like how you were going to move yourself from the first round in Tweed Valley to Petson in Europe for the second round? Like you hadn't really kind of got a full plan together, I guess. You just knew you wanted to go to these races.
Yeah, so at the time I was 17. I hadn't left New Zealand before. I didn't know anyone at all over here. No license to get a car. Didn't have the money to get a car. Didn't have the money to catch flights. And yeah, I managed to convince myself that I'd be able to hitch with other people to the next events.
Amazing. But there was like a chance encounter, I guess, with Win Masters that maybe changed like everything for you, right? The direction you went in completely changed as a result of that conversation. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it was the week before the Tweed Valley EWS. I was out biking and bumped into Win Masters, who's also a fellow New Zealander. I actually hadn't met him before, so it was a bit like, whoa, it's Win Masters. And I got chatting to him about how I don't know how I was going to get to the next EWS, and he was like, why don't you pedal there? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll pedal there. Just because, it was Win Masters, and I was like, I couldn't, he told me I had to pedal there, so of course I'd pedal there. So in a way it was that, and in another sense it was an answer to my issue. And that's kind of when I started to gear up to pedal there.
Unreal. And you had a bit of support from Deviate at this point, right? And it was Deviate that sort of stepped in and like helped you get ready for this, because you didn't go with the intention of riding.
Yeah, so Deviate definitely stepped in and helped me out there. So that week I was actually staying with the owner, one of the co-owners of Deviate, Ben Jones. So I kind of mentioned the idea to him. He thought I was stupid, but at the same time, I think he loved it. I don't think he had much confidence for me, but I was stubborn and kind of managed to convince him into helping me. So we ordered some bikepacking bags. He helped me out with his knowledge and advice. I guess then the focus changed to the Tweed Valley EWS, and at that point we were still waiting on my bikepacking bags to turn up. But then the Jubilee weekend hit, and it was public holidays, and nothing had turned up, and I was meant to leave like the next day. So he shot into, I think it was Glasgow, went to all the bike shops he could and found me some bikepacking gear. So yeah, none of this would have happened without his help. So he's amazing. Couldn't have done it without him.
Fair play. Yeah. So what did you change on the bike? Because pretty much it was like stock bike ready to go, throw a few bags on, but you did a few little bits and bobs, I think.
Yeah, so the only thing I changed was slick tires, and then of course, put bikepacking bags on it. So there wasn't actually much I did at all to my setup except for changing tires. Yeah.
What about like equipment for cooking, sleeping, that sort of stuff? Like how heavy did you go with that side of things?
So I added about 15 kg worth of weight to my bike. I had a few changes of clothes. I did have cooking set. I had a tent, sleeping bag, sleeping mat. I had a few power banks to keep my phone and Garmin charged, and that was about it. I kept it quite minimal.
Yeah, no messing. And then obviously you got a ride across the UK to get a ferry into Europe, and I think even getting on the ferry wasn't straightforward, right? Yeah,
so I pedalled over to Newcastle, went to board, and just like, you can't board, you're too young, you're 17, you've got to be 18. And I was like, I've got to get on this boat. And I was like, can I speak to your manager? So the manager came over, and luckily I actually asked for the manager, because they then gave me the option of getting a photocopy of my mum or dad's passport and then getting them to email saying that they gave permission for me to board the vessel. So then that's when another issue came in. I didn't have any data or like phone calling, so I couldn't actually get in contact with them at all. So I then went into like, I guess that there was a big building there where I'm not too sure what was happening in there, but there were lots of people. So I then went asking lots of people, asking if I could get a quick hotspot, and no one would help me. And then I spotted this elderly couple who looked like quite upset, and I later found out they'd lost all their luggage. But yeah, they ended up giving me a hotspot and like sat with me and kind of helped me out. So yeah, they saved me there, and I managed to get a hold of them, and it was 2 a.m. New Zealand time. So yeah, I think they woke up to a bit of a shock.
Did your parents at this point know that you'd taken on this bikepacking plan to go from Innerleithen to Petson?
Yeah, I guess I told them the bare details of it, but I don't think they quite knew what it entailed.
Were they cool with it? Like, especially like 17, first time away from New Zealand, like you're taking on quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think they were totally happy about it, but I think they know when I've made up my mind that, you know, the decision's been made. I'm super stubborn, and yeah, they're quite aware of that. So I think they kind of knew to then become supportive instead of turn against me.
Yeah, fair play. You were running AXS on the bike as well, without a spare battery, I think, on that first leg. Did it make it all the way?
Yeah, so I had AXS, which, yeah, in foresight needed more planning for a mission like this. And about halfway into the journey to, I think it was Slovenia, yeah, it died on me. And I was left basically on a single speed bike for 500 kilometers.
Was it like, how hilly was it? There must have been, I mean, you're heading into the mountains for a race, right? So there's got to be some fairly significant climbs.
It wasn't mountains, but it was definitely hilly. But I think the issue I had was I was stuck in a gear that was too hard for the hills, but then too low for the flats. So it was just such an awkward cadence. I was pushing all the time. And it definitely kind of, yeah, it got into my head, but I think by the end of it, I forgot about it, and it just was what it was.
Yeah. So are you regretting your decision at this point, or are you like, oh, I'm kind of into this, like maybe I'll do this for all the rounds? At what point do you go from like, this is a bit of a crazy idea, to, oh, maybe we'll carry on and keep doing this?
At that point, I think I was just tunnel visioned on getting there. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but it wasn't much. I think at that point I knew I couldn't just give up halfway in. So I just needed to get there, and then, yeah, then that would have been that. And I wasn't planning on biking to any more places after that one. So I was just going to be quite happy when that was over.
Fair enough. And what are you doing with like sleeping and eating and stuff? Because obviously you've got a very expensive bike with you. Like, how do you manage that when you're stopping for food and stopping to sleep?
Yeah, so that was something which was always on my mind. So in terms of food, I would only stop at like gas stations which were in the middle of nowhere. So somewhere where it would basically be a hassle for someone to steal my bike, which meant quite a awful diet. But then at the same time, a diet of sweets and lollies, whatever you call it, is like almost the best way to do a mission like that, because it's just dense energy. But yeah, my stomach wasn't loving it at times. And then in terms of sleeping, I would just pull over in the bushes in the middle of nowhere, where no one would find me basically, and go to sleep, and then get up in the dark just to make up some more time.
Did you carry a lock for the bike? Like, I mean, decent locks anyway are pretty heavy, so I'm guessing maybe you didn't.
I had a small hip lock. It was like one of their cable tie locks, so you could easily cut it, but it would mean that you wouldn't be able to just yank the bike and go. But it was quite minimal, so I did have that in my mind.
Yeah, fair. It's an incredible feat, mate. Like, Scotland to Petson, I think 1,550 kilometers, 74 hours of riding over 6 days. And then how much rest did you have before getting stuck into the next EWS?
I got there 2 days early, and I kind of, yeah, which was good. I got there ahead of time. I had some time just in case anything happened. But I got there and it was like I kind of panicked because I knew if I just stopped moving, my body just wouldn't work again. Essentially, like it would shut down, and I wouldn't be able to start up again. So those 2 days, I ended up doing a couple more big days on the bike just to keep the legs ticking over. So yeah, I just added to what was a huge week.
And then straight into an EWS. And I mean, it was going pretty well, right? I think you were 11th maybe in Fort William, and Petson wasn't too bad either. But am I right in thinking you dislocated your finger in one of the stages?
Yeah, I think it was on the second or third stage. I hit a big G out and my arms just gave out, and it was alongside a bank, so my arms gave out and I just turned into the bank and my finger just clipped the bank, and it just dislocated itself. So I made it down to the bottom of that stage with it kind of just flailing, went and saw the medics, got it back in, and they told me just to sit down, and I was like, I can't sit down, I've got to go get to this next stage, because there wasn't much time left at that point. So at that point I put a cable tie between my pinky finger and the finger next to it to stop it like flailing about. Did that stage with my finger cable tied. Then got after that stage was fine. It was a bit sore, but like once I got going, it wasn't even on my mind. After that stage, I then got it taped up, and yeah, it was good to go after that.
Amazing. And then I guess at some point you've got to make a decision as to what you do next, right? You've done this huge ride over 1,500 kilometers from Scotland to Petson, and it's a lot closer from Petson to the next round in Crans, Montana, I think. So was that an obvious decision to just hop back on the bike and ride it again?
Yeah, I think by that point I'd gotten quite a bit of momentum, and I saw that I was kind of gaining a bit of a following, and I knew that I wasn't, although I was quite happy with how I was placing at that point, I knew that it wasn't actually doing me much good in the big picture. So I thought, yeah, I'll pedal to the next one, continue to kind of build this following and just see how it goes. So yeah, I set off that evening after the EWS to Valdefasa.
Yeah, and it definitely did like gain some momentum for you, I think. So at some point, Deviate stepped in and said they'd pay for your flights out to Canada, US, so that you could do that part of the EWS. And I think, did they set up a GoFundMe campaign as well to like help raise money for the rest of that trip?
Yeah. So they stepped in, paid for my flights both ways to the USA/Canada, and yeah, also set up a GoFundMe, which also blew up. And I guess overnight my whole lifestyle for the next few months was completely changed. I was actually going to be able to eat good and have a much more enjoyable time, which was kind of hard to soak in at that point in time.
Yeah, were you kind of surprised like how quickly this thing like got that momentum? Because you went from a young New Zealander who's come over to give it a go to someone that like, you know, everyone was talking about, like it was on the Pink Bike homepage, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It was, didn't know what to do, but at the same time, it didn't feel like I was doing anything special. Like I didn't know why it was happening, but I think I knew in my head that I just needed to jump on that wave and follow it as much as I could while it was lasting.
Yeah. And did you make any like changes to your equipment or your kit then for heading out to North America?
Yeah, I did actually. I got on a new bike. So Deviate Cycles just came out with a new Claymore, which was a better suited bike. It was 165mm in the back instead of 150. So yeah, I was lucky enough to jump on that, and took it out for the first time in Whistler.
Yeah, but definitely better for the downhill side of things, I guess. Like your result in Whistler was good, eh? Was it top 10 again?
Yeah, I finished. Yeah, I think it was 10th there, which I had to work for that one, but I was stoked with that.
How are you finding it? Like at points in the season, I'm guessing you must have been pretty fatigued. Were you relatively fresh though when you went out to that particular round? Like, how did you get there? Did you fly to Vancouver and then ride up? Yeah,
flew to Vancouver, and I got there a couple weeks early, so I managed to just hitch up there with people. Vancouver to Whistler's not that far, so and yeah, there's always lots of people heading that way, so I didn't think there was any harm in jumping in with someone.
So you actually managed to get a little bit more of a kind of chilled run into that race, I guess. You hadn't like flogged yourself halfway across the country just before it.
Yeah, you say that, but I was quite aware of the fact that I was in Whistler, and it's Whistler, so I made sure that I made the most of it. So the whole couple of weeks before that EWS, I was at the bike park, like opening to closing, just smashing myself with laps. So I wasn't feeling that amazing going into that event.
So 10th, you're happy with that, right?
Yeah, I was quite happy with that.
What were your like aims on the racing side of things coming over? Did you have particular goals, or is it all sort of developed over the season?
I don't know. I didn't actually have any goals. I kind of went over with the idea that I was just going to get smashed and then I was going to be way out the back. So coming over, I kind of set the goal of that year just to learn and understand how things work, to then be able to go home and get my head down and kind of, then get fast the next year. So I kind of didn't have any expectations, but I think after I got that 11th or 12th at Tweed Valley, then my mind instantly changed to then wanting to do well and kind of aim for top 10s.
Yeah, fair play. So Whistler then onwards, like how do you get from there to, where was the next round? Was it Burke?
It was Burke,
yeah, Burke.
So Whistler and Burke are like on the complete opposite sides of the USA or Canada, just I guess that landmass. So I did have to catch a flight, which saved me about 5,000 kilometers of pedaling. So I was quite happy about that.
But that required a bike box, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I needed a bike box. So basically the week before my flight, I was messaging all the bike shops in Vancouver, managed to get a bike box organised, but didn't actually look at where the bike shop was. So I think it was North Vancouver, which was basically the opposite side of Vancouver to where the airport's located. So I had I think it was a 30-kilometer bike to do with a bike box. So I ended up getting the duct tape I had just bought, and a couple of tubes, and turning the bike box into a backpack.
So you rode all the way across Vancouver with a massive bike box on your back?
Yeah, there were a few close calls, and it was quite slow just because it was just catching the wind. It was, quite a tough pedal, but I was quite satisfied that I actually managed to get that done.
Yeah, it's a good effort. But then I think, did you get to the airport and realise you didn't have the right tool to take your pedals off?
Yeah. So at that same bike shop, I bought what I thought was an 8mm Allen key. But it turned out that it was actually a 10mm tool. So I went to take my pedals off and panicked because I didn't have the tool to take my pedals off, and I needed to take the pedals off to get the bike in the box. So I think I put up a post asking if anyone was near Vancouver Airport and had a tool for me to use. But I lucked out, and a fellow Kiwi, Daniel South, was there and had a tool for me to use. So I got saved by him.
It worked out all right, yeah. And where do you fly to then to get to Burke? I've never been that way.
I flew into Quebec, which was still Canada, which meant I had to bike over the border to get to Burke.
How was that? Yeah, not always the easiest border control, hey?
Yeah, it didn't go that well. So I purposely went to a border that wasn't one of the main borders. So there was like only 2 people in the building. I thought it was going to be sweet. There was no cars, no queues. But I get there, check my passport, and then I basically just get asked to come inside and have a seat. So I get like put in this like a small office cubicle thing, and they start like giving me questions. And I think the big concern was that I was young. I just turned 18 at that point. They wanted to speak to my mum and dad. They wanted to like know why I was there. They wanted to know how I was affording to be there. Because I guess they would have been able to see when I flew in, and I've been overseas for like a few months at that point. And then they kind of just got stuck on the point of wanting to see bank statements and see how much money I had. But since this was in the middle of nowhere, there was no signal, and they wouldn't let me use their Wi-Fi to like get online to show them my bank statements or anything like that. So they were a bit stuck on what to do, and then they asked if I had any cash. And I had maybe about $5 worth of coins, which I then showed them, which, they weren't that happy about. They thought I was just joking with them at that point. They walked away quite annoyed, and then came back 10 minutes later and asked what I was actually going into the USA for. So I said I was going to this bike event, and one of the guys piped up and said that he had just been talking to these funky New Zealanders the day before, which I like instantly knew was the Pivot guys like Ed Masters and Matt Walker. And then we started talking about mountain biking, because this guy mentioned that he was like an avid mountain biker. And I asked him what bike he had, and he said that he had just bought a full suspension e-bike, fat bike. And, he was like loving it, and it was getting out in the hills like each day after work. And basically after that they let me in, and that's all it took. And I was in there for like a few hours.
Amazing,
so
isn't it?
It wasn't a fun time.
Well, at least it was the mountain biking that saved you. That's pretty cool. And I guess through a lot of that North America leg, right, you're in bear country and other wild animals that you probably don't want to get that close to. Did you have any encounters?
Yeah, so actually while I was in Whistler, I asked one person, because I'd seen bears when I was in Whistler. I asked if there were any bears out that way, and he said like, no, you're good, you don't need to think about it. So I didn't think about it. So the first night I went to Wild Camp, my bike was maybe about 5 meters away, and I'd also had dinner that night, and I didn't put my food away. So I woke up in the middle of the night to like all this noise of like, it was a chip packet, and this bear was like scavenging in my food, and I woke up and just like panicked, and I shouted, and it scared the bear off. But I wasn't sleeping after that, so I packed up and just went at like in the middle of the night. I don't think I could sleep all week, just because I was scared of getting eaten by a bear.
Yeah, sounds like a fair comment. Yeah, there were a few other run-ins as well, right? There was some workmen that you accidentally upset along the way.
Oh, yeah, between Burke and Sugarloaf, I bumped into some highway workers who were just painting the white lines on the shoulder of the highway. I don't know if I missed the sign or if there wasn't a sign, but I ended up biking over the wet lines, and just got paint all over the place. Like, it was all over my tires. It was obvious that it was me. And I bumped into these guys, and they just started yelling at me. And one of the guys got into his pickup and just forced me off the highway. So,
whoa,
yeah, that was quite a big shock to me. I was just quite scared to speak to anyone after that, because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, not good, eh? And was that also linked to an incident with a goose? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I've forgotten about all this stuff. There's so much which has happened. Yeah, so I got forced off the highway, and then I just went into these woods and just walked in these woods for quite a while, because I didn't want to see this guy again. And I came to this like swampy kind of pond bit, and I guess there would have been geese nesting there, which kind of didn't come to mind. A goose just started to charge at me and just attacked me. It was getting me quite good, actually. So I basically just started to fight back and defend myself. I got away and found the highway again, and I was back on the bike.
Amazing. Do you ever like wonder what the hell you're doing? Like, you're there, you've just been chased off the highway by some crazy guy, you're having a fight with a goose, like riding a 160mm enduro bike across parts of the world that aren't really designed for enduro bikes. Like, are there moments where you kind of question this, like the sanity of it all, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is quite stupid, but I think, yeah, I don't think sometimes. So if anyone was going to do it, I think it would be me.
What keeps you going? Because it can't be easy, right? Like getting woken up by a bear stealing your food, not being able to sleep for a week, all of these incidents and everything. Like, and you know, that's without even thinking about the hard physical effort that you're putting in day out on probably a suboptimal like diet with no rest. Like, what keeps you motivated to keep going and keep doing these things?
Yeah, I think I was just able to build a mindset that, in my eyes, turned it into a job that just had to be done. And I just made it, and I was just able to convince myself that I had to do it, and there was no other option but to do it. So I just had to keep moving forward. And then I guess in the bigger picture, if I didn't keep moving forward, I wouldn't have made it to these events, which was the whole purpose of being over there.
And was that literally like the outcome of it for you was just getting to the event? You weren't like thinking about that bigger picture of, I don't know, like growing the following, developing that story and the things that could come from that?
I think that was definitely in the back of my mind, like at all times, but I ended up getting so burnt out and fatigued that I just needed to get to these events. And, there wasn't much thought about the social media kind of side of things until it was too late, essentially. So I guess there's a lot of things I wish I'd done that year, but at the same time, I don't think I had the energy to do anything more than I was doing.
Yeah, I can imagine it would make a pretty incredible documentary if you had a film crew following you around, but it probably wouldn't have been the same trip if that was the case. So it's cool that you've had those experiences, and it's got, like, to some extent, like, you've had potential for pretty bad or pretty high risks, right? There was an incident, I think, before you left the US where you were decided to cut the knobbles off some tires to make riding a little bit easier, and caused a pretty serious bleed.
Yeah. So after the last USA EWS in, it was Sugarloaf, I had a pedal back to Quebec, which was quite a big pedal. And all I had over there was downhill tires, just because I didn't have the weight to fly over with slicks. So I was like, I'm not going to be using these tires again. I might as well cut the knobs off them and turn my downhill tires into slicks. So I got out the kitchen knife and started chopping away, and I slipped, and I just managed to cut myself just below my hand, and I got a vein, and I think, I just fainted. I think mostly because I was so tired at that point, and it just didn't. I don't like blood to begin with, but I think it was also the fact I was so tired. So I fainted, and it was Slalomir Lukazik, which actually found me outside his porch. They were also luckily packing up at the same time, so they were in and out. And I came to with him holding my legs in the air and with my hand bandaged up.
Amazing. It's good that they were around to look after you. So did you get a break then coming like back into Europe? Because I think there was like a couple of weeks, was there, between like the US block and then the final 2 rounds in Europe? Yeah.
I think I had a couple of weeks, which once again I filled out with lots of biking. Spent heaps of time in the Alps with the Deviate team. We did some missions, which was awesome, but I came into that next EWS in Switzerland feeling, quite burnt out still. So I wasn't too sure how that'd go.
Yeah, how was it then? Like, was it noticeable, like, that you were really starting to fatigue at this part in the season? Did you feel a difference in your ability to put in those big days?
Yeah, it was quite noticeable. I think more so in my head. I think the big takeaway was that I just kept falling off the bike. No matter what I did, no matter if I took it easy or not, I'd just always fall off. And I don't usually fall off that often, so that was kind of a visible effect of just being tired.
Yeah, definitely, man. And again, you had a pretty brutal get out from there. I think you rode from the Swiss round to Ludenvier, which is another 1,000 odd kilometers. And I think you left like straight after the race, the evening after the race, and rode all the way through the night.
Yeah, so after the Swiss EWS, I left 30 minutes after finishing. And yeah, so the plan wasn't to bike all night, but it got to the point where I would have gone to sleep and it was -2. And I only had, I guess, what you could call like summer kit. So it was just way too cold to sleep. If I was going to stop, I wouldn't have been able to sleep. So what made the most sense in my head was just to keep moving and keep warm. And even biking with the wind chill, it was too cold. So what I ended up doing was cutting holes in my sleeping bag so I could slide into it and bike in my sleeping bag, which worked quite well. But I actually ended up getting too hot. But being too hot was better than being too cold. So it was good. And I actually ended up losing quite a bit of fluff in the sleeping bag. So it actually got cooler as the night went on. So yeah, it was well thought out.
You've invented a new riding product. I like it. The riding sleeping bag sounds like a great idea. So at the end of the season, then, like what you've achieved is phenomenal. Like in anyone's books, it's a proper adventure. Like looking back on it, were you really proud with what you'd achieved, and what were your thoughts about like where do we go from here?
Yeah, I don't even know if I ever looked back at the season. Like, I think with all the things I've done, I've never actually been satisfied with what I've done. Like, I definitely work hard, but I feel like there's always more to give. So, yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like, what's next, and moving on to whatever that thing was.
And what was next then? What have you dreamt up and been involved in more recently?
Yeah, I guess at my core, I still want to compete in the EDR circuit, it's now called. But I think I also showed to myself that I'm okay at biking long distances. So I think this year was kind of when I sparked the idea to kind of move into some of that long distance stuff and just see what I'm capable of, and push my body to find my limit.
Yeah, and Deviate, I take it we're behind supporting you for that.
Yeah. Once again, Deviate has been behind my back the whole way, and always putting ideas into my head now.
I was going to say, whose idea was it then? Because you've recently had a crack at the Highland Trail 550. Well, first off, tell us a bit about what the Highland Trail 550 is for people that don't know.
Yeah, so it's a signature loop in the Scottish Highlands. Starts in the middle of Scotland and then goes all the way up to the northernmost point of Scotland, basically. And it's basically all dirt, about 25% hiker bike, and it's just known to be savage. I think that's it at its core, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme as well, especially when you factor in the unpredictability of Scottish weather, even at the best times of year. How did you prepare for your attempt at Highland Trail 550 then?
I kind of didn't, in a way. It was only a month or almost 2 months ago now that I did the Tasmania EDRs, and only a week before flying out to Tasmania, I actually chipped a bone in my foot. So I just battled the pain in Tasmania and then got home and had a few easy weeks of not much, and then after that it was time to come to Scotland. So in the few months before the attempt, I kind of didn't do much, and it wasn't ideal, but I mean, I think I had an okay enough base to work off that should have been fine, all going to plan.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you've clearly got a good underlying level of fitness. Again, what did you do setup wise for 550 then? Did you take any different equipment? Did you do anything different to the bike?
Yeah, so this time I used the Highlander, which is Deviate's smaller bike. It's 145 in the back, so it's actually not much of a small bike, but better than the Claymore I've been using last year. I put XC tyres on, and then I had a lighter weight setup in terms of sleeping. And I also had a big backpack which held all my water and clothes.
Yeah, I'm guessing you've got to be like very self-sufficient on this loop, hey? Like you're out in proper wilderness. You're not going to a random fuel stop to pick up a can of Coke.
Yeah, so I guess the whole point of the challenge is that you are self-sufficient in terms of you can't have any outside support. So you can't have a support team giving you food or water. But there are shops along the way where you can stop and buy food, but it's about 12 to 24 hours between shops, just kind of depending on when you hit them, because if you're biking at night, shops are going to be shut. So there's a whole bunch of things which make it hard in terms of fueling. Yeah.
And did you have like a goal for it in how long you wanted to do it in, or was it just a case of you wanted to complete it? Because it's a lot of people have tried and failed, right?
Yeah, so I wasn't too sure where I would kind of stand in a challenge like this, as it's definitely my first challenge of this type. But I think the ultimate goal is getting a sub 4-day time, which is only about 10 hours slower than the quickest time which has been set. But I think the big unknown for me was it was about 25% hiker bike. And I'm not that good on my feet. I don't do much hiking, walking or jogging. So I think it was just mainly going to be up to how my feet would handle it.
Yeah. Take us through it then. Like bring us along with you for that experience. Like how did it go?
Yeah, so it was tough. It definitely humbled me. Scotland is, such a insane place. Like, yeah, it's mind-blowing the places that I went to, but at the same time, I hated Scotland so much because it was just a constant bog the whole time. Like, wherever I went, it was just mud, bog, and yeah, I was walking up the hills, I was walking along the flats, and then I'd say that half the downhills I had to walk down just because it was a bog.
Whoa.
So I wasn't, it was quite a battle mentally, because I was expecting, I'm going to have to walk up a lot of hills, but I wasn't expecting to also walk down a lot of the hills. That was kind of where I was expecting to make up some time. So, that was something I found quite hard to deal with.
Yeah, we've had a super wet winter and spring, I guess. So the weather hasn't done anything to dry out the ground, especially up there. I would expect like that makes life pretty hard, and like you say, pretty depressing when you're pushing your bike down a hill as well. How was the weather while you were out on the loop? Like how did it treat you on the actual days you were out there?
Yeah, I think I got some classic Scottish weather most days, which was intervals of nice sunshine and then intervals of just getting soaked as storms came in. But like overall, it was quite good until the last day, which I guess ultimately I had to pull out on, because in the most isolated part of Scotland, in between two passes, a storm came in. Like a huge wind hit me, and I just couldn't move forward. Basically, I was just fighting against a wall of wind, and I guess my health took a large hit. I was borderline hypothermic. I started to cough up blood. I just couldn't think. I was getting delusional, and I just had to somehow find shelter. So I managed to find a bothy, which is a mountain hut which you can access, and I set up camp there for the night. And I think I got there about 2:30 a.m. after battling for 6 hours in that storm.
Wow, you must have been glad to see that bothy, mate.
Yeah, it was it was a good sight, but it wasn't over then.
Yeah, what was your like? You spent the night there then, and when you woke up, were you kind of keen to go again? Like, how was the decision made as to whether to proceed or not?
Yeah, so I think that night I made the decision that I was done. Like, I guess in a way I saw my life flash before my eyes. I knew if I didn't make it to that bothy that I would have been done basically. There's no way I could have set up camp and just stayed warm enough. At that point, all my clothes were soaking wet, and the only thing keeping me warm was just moving forward. So I made it to that bothy, basically got out of all of my wet clothes, and then just sat there shaking all night. And then I had a Garmin PLB, so I was able to contact. I had a support team there for safety and who were also filming, so I was able to contact them to let them know I made it to the bothy and kind of update them on my health situation. But once I made it into the bothy, the Garmin stopped updating my location, and I guess they knew kind of my health situation, so they panicked and ended up hiking in. It was about 5 hours to see how I was doing in that bothy, and yeah, I ended up waking up and I was fine. I ended up waking to them shouting my name, saying because they couldn't find me. But yeah, I ended up being fine, but it turned into quite a situation just because I couldn't contact them and they couldn't contact me and they couldn't see my location.
Yeah. Did it take a little bit of recovering from, or were you actually, once you'd kind of warmed back through, were you relatively okay?
Yeah, it took some time to warm up, and at that point I was still kind of adamant that I was done, but I still had a 4 to 5 hour walk out of the mountains. So I'd say after a couple hours of walking out, I then kind of in my head convinced myself that I was still able to move forward, so there was no excuse not to move forward. So I wanted to get back into the challenge after that, but I was kind of aware of the state I was in, so I asked the guys who were walking out with me what their opinions were, and they just said that there was no way they were going to let me continue in the state I was in, which looking back on it was, the best decision, because I was in quite a state and I just couldn't make the decision for myself.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like the right call. But I guess for you, is that the first time a challenge has kind of got the better of you?
Yeah. I think that's the first time I've genuinely kind of found my limits and not been able to continue on in a challenge. So I suppose it hit me hard, but in the end, I think I'm definitely satisfied because that's all I had to give. I found my limits, and I couldn't move forward, so that's what it was about.
Yeah, good call. What does that do to you now, though? Does that mean you want that 550 even more? You want to come back and do it again, or are you kind of able to move on from it and do something else?
I'm not too sure. I don't think I've had enough time to think about that and let it soak in, but I think my initial thoughts are that I don't want to do it again. There's just way too much walking and hike a bike that it just doesn't suit me by any means. So I'm definitely keen to do some other challenges like that, but that are more bike focused and not multidiscipline.
What is there anything on the radar? Anything you've spotted that you like the look of?
Something I've planned again with Deviate is a tour of Mont Blanc. So that would be about a 10,000 meters of elevation kind of loop, which should be a good challenge, but I think that would only be about 24 hours. So it's a bit shorter, but still wouldn't be easy by any means. Yeah.
And I think I'm right in saying you had a film crew along with you, at least for parts of the Highland Trail attempt. What was that like? Did that change the experience in a significant way for you?
So I had the film team with me who followed me about at all the bits they could access, I guess. So they weren't on any of the mountains or any of the sections out the back. But I think for me, it definitely gave me a lot of confidence, because I guess I felt a lot safer because I knew if something happened that they'd be able to come get me. So it was a positive thing, although they weren't actually physically helping me.
Yeah. What did you like self-film some of the more remote stuff? Because I'm guessing it's the really remote stuff where maybe the challenge can get more significant, right? You're really on your own at that point.
Yeah, I was able to get a few phone clips, but I wasn't filming as such. And to be honest, I just wasn't in a mental state to be able to do that and to be able to focus on it. I think in the bits which would have been best for the film, that's when I was finding it the toughest.
Yeah, that's I guess what people kind of want to see, isn't it? They want to see how deep you had to dig to get as far as you did. Like it's hard to get that balance, I think, between filming something but keeping it like real. Because yeah, I'm guessing there's a chance that having a film crew there can change the reality of the situation to some extent.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't think it's a balance that anyone can perfect, because as soon as you have someone pointing a phone or whatever in your face, it changes things, and you kind of, yeah, you put on a face.
Yeah, definitely, man. So what's the plan for the film? Will we see it soon? Like where will it be released? You know?
Yeah, so the film's planned to come out mid-June. And I think the easiest place to find it will be on Pink Bike or via DV8 Cycles YouTube channel.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that. It's an incredible challenge, and be cool to see your attempt at it. We should start wrapping up. We've got our final 4 questions that we ask pretty much everybody. The first of those is, if our listeners had £150, which is about 300 New Zealand dollars, to improve their performance on a bike, what would you recommend they go and spend it on? And I'm guessing it's probably not going to be a mountain biking sleeping bag.
No, I'd say go get like a lesson, and just essentially purchase some confidence. I think confidence on the bike is the most valuable thing you can have. So I think a lesson is the easiest way to get that.
Yeah, nice. I like that. The second question is, if you could wind back the clock and sit down with yourself age 16, what advice would you give him? And that's not very long ago for you. Are you 18, 19?
Yeah, 18. Oh, that's a hard one. I'd say, yeah, just stay tunnel vision and keep chasing that goal.
Are there ever blips for you, like away from that? It feels like you really like literally do get a target fixation on something and just nothing's going to sway you. But are there ever moments where you feel like you're going to get kind of pushed off course?
Yeah, I don't think so. Like my whole life, I've always been obsessed with one thing, and I've always had phases. Like I guess at one point it was like I'm gaming, then I had a phase of making like loom bands, and then I had a phase of making cakes, and then it was a phase of making of mountain biking. And when I'm stuck within that phase, that's like all I can think of and all I want to do. So yeah, I've definitely got quite a fixation on whatever is on my mind.
Amazing. Impressive stuff. All right, question 3. If you could have a coaching session from anybody, past or present, who would it be and what would you want to learn from them? And it doesn't have to be a mountain biker necessarily.
Oh, I think David Goggins, just like his mindset is something
Yeah.
I've kind of aspired to, I suppose. So yeah, I think that's what it would be.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've not read. He released a book maybe a couple of years ago that a lot of people have recommended. Actually, I haven't got around to reading it yet. But is that one you've read?
No, I've listened to a few podcasts. I haven't actually seen that book. Been a bit busy the last couple of years.
Okay. Yeah, you've been too busy riding bikes.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, last one. What do you do every day that you feel benefits you?
I think just moving forward. I think whatever I do in a day is always planned towards like something in the future. So yeah, I think no matter what I do, it's making myself feel like I've achieved something in that day, working towards a goal.
Nice. And you've got, like you said, the Tour de Mont Blanc project coming up. Are there other projects like in the works? Is there anything you can tell us about, or is it all to be played for?
Yeah, I guess it's that alongside the EDR circuit. And then, yeah, I'm not too sure what else I'll get up to this year. I'm quite spontaneous with challenges, so yeah, could end up doing something stupid along the way.
Good stuff, man. Well, if people want to follow you throughout the season, where's the best place for them to look?
Yeah, I'd say just on Insta at Matthew EFMGB. That's kind of where I post most of my stuff and updates.
Hey, so I'll put links in the show notes to that so people can find it and follow you throughout the year. Keep doing what you're doing, man. It's unique, it's impressive, and it's been really cool to like hear your story and follow your progress over the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to seeing what insane things you get up to next. But yeah, thanks for coming on and all the best for the rest of the season, man.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. It's been awesome.